And today we, it was so funny, so the company is now technically 3 years old. When we started in 2013 actually, the FAA, which is the regulator for aviation in the United States, predicted that in 2020, as many as 25,000 drones would be in America. We were selling 25,000 drones a month at that time. And we're like, how is it possible that the regulator of America's aerospace industry has no idea what's going on in the aerospace industry? And the answer is they didn't think we were part of the aerospace industry. And it was so telling to have Vint Cerf, because I remember talking to Vint about the exact same thing happening with the internet. In the United States, there's a regulator called the Federal Communications Commission, and their job was to regulate telephone companies. And they were doing a great job. There were like 20 telephone companies, they were all regulated, everybody knew who everybody was. It was all completely controlled. This is in 1993. And I remember him telling the story. So they're sitting there, so a friend of his was working at the FCC, and the guy said, yeah, so we completely figured out the future of communications. AT&T is going to, bring it to us. It's going to be, interactive TV and intelligent networks, and it's completely sorted. The regulations are in place. We have a plan. And then the guy says, you know that the computers are now talking to each other with these LANs, these local area networks. It's like, yeah, don't worry about it. That's computers. That's different. And the next year, they have the same meeting, and the guy said, we've totally got it. Information superhighway is on track. Intelligent networks, telcos have got this one. And the guy says, oh, you know those LANs I was telling you about last year? Now they're talking to each other outside of the building. It's called WANs, wide area networks. And they said, don't worry about it, still computers. And then 2 months later, they're like, oh, you know what they're doing over those WANs? They're actually transferring not just data, but sound and voice. And it's like, still data? And they're like, they're actually talking to each other over those WANs, and it's like making phone calls, and they're like, what? And then they realized that they'd accidentally they completely missed the fact, they missed the internet. And they thought they were regulating the communications industry because they were regulating the telcos, and what they hadn't realized is that the real future of the communications industry was coming from Vint Cerf and the Homebrew Computing Club and a bunch of radical computer companies who were not even on the radar. And at that point they said, oh, we give up. We don't regulate communications anymore. And they pretty much didn't. And the same thing's now happening in aerospace. They were regulating the defense contractors and the military and the aerospace companies. And meanwhile, a dad and his kids and this Tijuana teenager put more drones in the air than all the aerospace companies combined. And then a bunch of Chinese companies put 10 times more drones than us. And last year, we put 1 million drones in the air in America. About half of them using our platform, either made by us or our partners, and the other half made by the Chinese. And the FAA, which had been sort of coming up with their drone regulatory policy, which was going to be 2022, I think was coming out, and every year it would move back by 1 year. Because it's so easy for them to say no. It's like, you know what, we're not ready to let drones in, so no. And the aerospace company's like, can we do drones now? And they're like, no, we haven't created a regulatory, and we just accidentally put 1 million drones in the air. And the good news is that we came up with also, the prices fell by 3 orders of magnitude. We came up with all sorts of cool applications. The bad news is that these drones started being used in sort of unsafe ways near airports and invading people's privacy. But the good part about that is that suddenly the FAA had to act. And they're like, okay, you guys put 1 million drones in the air. Those drones are now a clear and present danger. What are you going to do about it? And the answer is, we have solutions. We're going to make sure they ping the cloud and make sure that it's not, that you don't fly in unsafe areas. Just tell us what safe is. If you tell us what the rules are, then we will implement the rules tomorrow. And the FAA said, deal. And so they did. And so in 3 weeks, the FAA is basically going to allow commercial use of drones in America because we forced them to, by putting 1 million drones in the air in the hands of children and everybody else. So that's permissionless innovation. We just did it. We did it. We kind of accidentally came through a loophole, the back door, whatever, grassroots, and it forced the world to adapt to us. And Uber did the same thing, and Airbnb did the same thing, and PayPal did the same thing. So this is what we made. It is weirdly And this is going to sound a little like bragging, but we accidentally made the most sophisticated drone in the world because, not because we're particularly smart, but because our users are the least sophisticated drone operators in the world, which is to say our users are consumers. The military, the aerospace industry, was super slow at innovating because their operators were so good. They had pilot's license and checklists, and they read the manual, and they were trained. And our users are 14-year-olds who open a box under the Christmas tree, expect to push a button and have it fly. And it is brutal, by the way, to satisfy the expectations of a 14-year-old on Christmas morning, but it is necessary to create a product that is intelligent and easy to use and has autonomy and sense and avoid and all those things. So basically, by targeting 14-year-old boys rather than 4-star generals, we ended up accidentally innovating faster than the military did. And the Chinese did it even faster than us. Okay, so this is what we did to the helicopter industry. We vaporized it. And it's only, and by the way, if I take the scale in a little further, so we basically took helicopter prices from, or drone helicopter price from about $5 million to about $500 in that many years. And then the Chinese did it to us. And we came in at like $1,500 and they took it down. Now Xiaomi, the amazing Chinese phone company, released a drone today for, I think it's $260, and it's like even better than our drones. And it's going to go to zero, essentially. So in the same way that the internet reduced telco profits and prices to zero, we are doing the same thing to aerospace. And if you know anybody from Airbus or British Aerospace or Boeing or Lockheed, they should be as scared as Nokia or France Telecom or anybody else, because you're now seeing what permissionless innovation does to industries. This is as disruptive as anything you'll see, and no one saw it coming, including me. It was a complete accident. I'm going to show you a little video of what these are for. So we started with consumer, but now they're mapping the world. This is the new satellite. It just takes a lot of pictures and creates these photorealistic, perfect 3D models of the world. It measures the world automatically, creates these topologies, these digital elevation maps. This is stuff that satellites can't do. It's stuff you can't do from the ground. It's trivially easy with the drone. You push one button, and you suddenly get these kind of maps anywhere, anytime. And so when we talk about the Internet of Things, about extending the Internet's limbs out into the physical world and measuring the physical world the way we measure the digital world, this is how it's going to happen. You're going to push a button, the sensor's going to go into the sky. It's called a drone, but we just think of a sensor in the sky. It's going to collect the data, and the data is going to automatically be piped to the cloud, and suddenly you've scanned, you've digitized the planet. It's called reality capture, and it's how we're going to start measuring all those big industries: agriculture, energy, construction. The biggest industries in the world, which are essentially analog, unmeasured, are going to be measured because we've turned it into one button because the 14-year-olds on Christmas Day made us do it. So the future is what we call cloud robotics. And it's not like we're super smart and realize that the future is going to be cloud robotics. It's just that we happen to start with smartphones. Because we are an outgrowth of the smartphone industry, we inherited everything smartphones bring with them, which includes connecting to the internet. And so of course the drones were connected to the internet because the smartphones were connected to the internet. But once they're connected to the internet, suddenly they're much smarter than the device itself. Now the drones can have just enough intelligence to collect to the massive intelligence of the cloud, and now the cloud is smarter because it has the sensors of the drones. And you're just starting to see this. You don't think of drones as being part of the Internet of Things, but it is. And autonomous cars and the wearables, these are all now basically the internet spreading its tendrils out into the physical world, gathering a huge amount of data, bringing it back, intelligently analyzing it, and then making those devices smarter. Not because they're carrying so much intelligence on board, but because they can tap the collective intelligence of the cloud. So I just want to end with some tips and lessons. The first one is the one we just talked about. We did not set out to be an aerospace company. we just set out to, to put robots in the sky. And as we thought about it, people said, when I first came out with that Lego drone with the kids, the first guy who responded on the internet said, that's amazing. The second guy who responded said, that's illegal. It turns out that drones or autopilots are regulated like cruise missile controllers. They're an export-controlled munition. And the act of putting it on the internet is export control. And technically, we were advised by an actual attorney, technically we'd weaponized Lego. Well, so I was like, that's ridiculous, right? I'm not going to stop because somebody told me I just weaponized Lego. I'm just going to keep doing it. And if they want to come after me, I would love to see that congressional hearing where they bring my 9-year-old up and ask him how exactly he felt he had permission to put his Lego project on the internet. It's not going to happen, right? It's ridiculous. And so we just started thinking about it. We said, well, okay, there's an exemption to export control called public domain or open source. Public domain, open source seems like the same thing. There's an exemption for things like certification for FCC and CE. It's if you sell to developers, you don't need to. They're not end users, so you don't need to certify them. Boom, that's what we're going to do. It turns out in flying that commercial use of drones was illegal, but the recreational use was allowed on the grounds that, of course, recreational was supposed to allow for radio-controlled airplane hobbyists to fly. No one ever thought that recreational users would be flying drones. And so another loophole, also ridiculous that children are allowed to fly drones, but trained professionals are not. But we took advantage of the loophole, we just did it. And so on, we just found loophole after loophole, and we just kept going. And I'm still out of jail, so it must have worked out okay. This is what we call innovating in the gray space. Regulation, technology moves faster than regulation. It's not illegal, we're not breaking the law, it's just the law wasn't clear. Just like the law of what's a taxi, what's a hotel, what's a bank. Somebody was telling the story of the Dutch transaction company that applied for a bank license. That's crazy. It takes like 7 years to get a bank license. If PayPal had applied for a bank license, there wouldn't be a PayPal. Don't apply for bank licenses, just do it. Put 1 million whatevers in the marketplace, and then let the regulators come to you. There's a small chance you will go to jail, but there's a really big chance that you're going to